Hello everybody, and welcome again to our Schools of Sanctuary event this evening. As you all know, it is called Empowering Student Voice and Leadership. There's a few different reasons that we decided to run this event this evening. As you all know, Criterion 5 of becoming a School of Sanctuary is making sure that students have opportunities to have their voices heard in school. But also over the past year, one thing that has really, been very apparent is we've been inspired by the efforts of so many schools to kind of really go beyond that and make sure that students have opportunities to have their voices heard outside of school, really living that, extending welcome beyond the school gates kind of perspective, which also links in really well with Criterion 7. So we thought this evening what we could do is we could bring a number of schools that have done great things in this area, along with my co-presenter this evening, John McClaverty from Oxfam Campaigns, to talk about a really helpful resource that they have to support schools who are wanting to work in this area. So hopefully by the end of our quick event tonight, you will go home with some inspiring ideas and activities that you can do in school, along with some helpful resources and guidance to help support you empower student voice and leadership in your sanctuary efforts. But without further ado, I will pass over to John, who's going to talk a little bit about the fantastic resource they've developed at Oxfam to help you in this area. Thanks, John.
Hi, and thank you so much, Megan, and just welcome everyone. If there is a right time to be on a School of Sanctuary call, given what we're seeing our current government doing in the sort of space of human rights and refugee rights, this is the moment to be on this call. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here today and for joining with us. Right, I'm going to try to share my screen, which is where this afternoon will most probably go pear-shaped. No, maybe not. Let's see. Right, I'm hoping that everybody will be able to see this. Is that showing?
Perfect,
Megan?
John, thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So I'll begin by introducing myself. I'm going to speak for about 20 minutes, and my name is John McClaverty. I'm the youth campaigner for Oxfam GB. I've put my contact details, our website and our Twitter feeds on that slide because my job is to talk to educators. I'm a friendly person, so afterwards, if you have any questions or anything you'd like to follow up with me, please feel absolutely free to do that. So what I want to do in the next sort of short period of time is to briefly look at some strategies and resources for empowering student voice and leadership within school. And as Megan said, this is a very important part of the Sanctuary journey, but it's also in lots of other similar programs that are running in schools like Fair Trade, UNICEF Rights Respecting, Christian Aid have a Global Neighbours program, Oxfam ourselves have a School Speak Out program. There's Send My Friend to School, there's even GCSE Citizenship Studies and the DAV Award Scheme. They all call to different sort of extents for student voice and leadership to be empowered within the school curriculum. And, I think this is quite a difficult thing to do. I don't think it's, I think a lot of sort of school culture, in a way, unintendedly works a little bit against it. So there's a number of strategies and a number of ways of thinking, which I think can be really helpful to sort of strengthening student voice and leadership. And the first tool which I find really useful and I use all the time, there isn't a week when I don't look at some point or another at Roger Hart's ladder of participation. And I usually find that teachers haven't never seen this before. And I wish I could see your faces if you're looking puzzled or if you're looking totally, oh, there's Hart's ladder again. He's going to talk about that. Maybe be interesting in the questions afterwards to get a sense of that. But Roger Hart is a children's rights academic, and he's currently a professor in the USA. And he wrote this ladder of participation to guide educators to encourage young people to participate more actively in projects, but also to encourage project designers to ensure that children's rights are respected within the projects that they're doing. And when Roger Hart talks about participation, he's talking about it in the international development context, and the definition that's given is that participation is the right held by all people to engage in society and in the decisions that impact their lives. Participation is therefore a political endeavor that challenges oppression and discrimination, in particular of the poorest and most marginalized people. So I really hope that we're all on board that that's what we're sort of talking about together this evening. So this ladder of participation has a number of key features. It's a progressive ladder of 8 rungs, and each rung represents a description of children's involvement in a particular project. So rungs number 1, 2, and 3 are not participatory, and they are undesirable. They should not be happening, but very often they do happen. So the first message coming out of Hart's Ladder is to avoid, not to fall into the trap of rungs 1, 2, and 3. But anything above the red line is participatory and is good to do. But these are not precisely like sort of the old national curriculum levels. It's not like if you're on level 4 this week, you should be on level 5 next week. They are progressive, but the intention is that you should be working at the rung above number 4, which is the most comfortable and natural for you and your students, and to be sort of aware of where you're at and what you might do to move higher, but you don't always have to get to the very top. So for example, at Oxfam, when I'm designing project work, I'm usually looking at rung 6 and rung 7. I have done rung 8 work a few times, but it's quite, difficult to facilitate, and it's not, it's great when it happens, but it's not as if you have to, worry if you are slightly lower down. But I think this is just a really great framework to be thinking about as the background to what you're planning in school. This particular version comes from the Living Democracy website, but if you Google Hart's Ladder, you'll find loads and loads of stuff online about it. So you have Hart's Ladder in your head. You want to sort of get to the higher rungs. So what is it that you actually have to do? So I'm going to break it down into 3 different elements. The first one is redefining the role of the teacher. So I think if you're going to successfully promote participation, voice, and leadership in the classroom, the teacher has to consciously and explicitly shift their role. So your role is going to change. And, most of the time, young people are used to the teacher teaching in quite a traditional way. They expect the teacher to follow a particular role because this is what they experience most of their time in school. So if you're going to become more of a mentor or a facilitator in relation to their activities, you're going to have to sort of very explicitly and, make that shift and explain it. So I think there's 2 main things to do. The first one is to establish and agree very consistent ground rules with the young people and create a safe space so that young people feel supported and secure in expressing their opinions. And then the second is to adopt an appropriate role in relation to the activity that you're doing and to make that clear to the young people. So by this, I mean, are you going to be taking sides in what you're doing? Or are you going to be sitting on the fence? Or are you going to be doing something else? So there are 6 different roles that you could take, and they're all outlined in the Oxfam Teaching Controversial Issues Guide, of which more. But making whatever role you decide to adopt clear and not jumping around between roles, like not being the sort of critical friend and then taking sides, and unless you're explaining it as you go along, is going to make it much, much easier for the young people. And this may feel a little bit uncomfortable or unusual to begin with. So you do it at a pace that feels right for you and the young people, and be prepared for the unexpected. I found when I was a teacher that young people who were sort of quite quiet and unmotivated in the traditional lesson suddenly flourished when they were given a greater say in what they were doing. And sometimes the ones who were, expecting to be spoon-fed a little bit and were sort of goody-goodies in class found this change a little bit difficult to navigate and took a little bit longer. So it can lead to some sort of interesting shifts in how the young people relate to what you're doing. So you've established a new role for yourself with the students. I think now it's time to get on with the project work that you're doing to becoming a school of sanctuary, for example. So how are you going to actually do this? How are you going to sustain it? So what I've found through sort of working with Oxfam and in a number of schools is that many of the techniques and methodologies that work well in global citizenship education are not that dissimilar to the methods used in sort of project management by adults. So for example, the acronym SMART, it works as a generic project management acronym, but I think in this context, it also has value in the classroom when you're getting young people to set targets and get organized. So all these sort of processes, such as young people agreeing what their common goals are, about how to be smart, about how to overcome obstacles. There's a really great activity called Bricks and Hammers, and how to write action plans and to make an action plan work in real life. These are all in what is now quite an old document called Get Global, a skills-based approach to active global citizenship. And it was published back in 2003 by a bunch of the international development organizations. And if you look at it, the photographs, the people's haircuts and their fashions and stuff, way out of date if you remember 2003. But the activities within this guide are still robust, they're still good. So that's one that you can download from the Oxfam and other websites, and it has a host of amazing activities that you can dip into and really pick and mix for yourselves. Right, so we're up and running, but the next challenge, I think, and one of the biggest challenges, particularly with a project, like Schools of Sanctuary, which can take about a year, to go through the process, is actually keeping the momentum going. You can whip up enthusiasm in young people for quite sort of easily, but how do you keep the momentum running for maybe 6 months or a year? And this can be difficult for grown-ups, never mind for children, so how do you do it? And I would suggest that you introduce young people to the skill of holding regular meetings. So just like we have our work meetings to keep ourselves on track at work, that you bring that concept of holding meetings and into the classroom, like the meeting shown in the picture. And you do it in a way that is fun and productive. You don't sort of throw young people into a senior leadership team meeting on a sort of Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock. You do it in a sort of fun and engaging way. But in that process, I think helpful to think about tips that the young people have themselves for running a rewarding and welcoming meeting. It usually involves snacks and soft drinks somewhere along the line. Deciding upon the roles, particularly the chair and the secretary of the meeting, and rotating those roles around so everyone has a chance to demonstrate those forms of leadership. And maybe even the teacher role models some of those particular responsibilities to begin with. And then developing a method for keeping written track of what the meeting decides, having an agenda and minutes, and doing that in quite an organized way. Because often the difficult bit isn't sitting down and having the meeting itself. It's the time in between the meetings when the participants are responsible for going away and doing their allocated tasks and reporting back the next time. So keeping track of this and developing that sort of atmosphere of friendly, relaxed accountability and teamwork is really important to make the project work. And I just realized at Oxfam before this call, I was in a meeting and nobody took any minutes. So I can forget about what I was asked to do. No, I won't do that. So we have some guidelines in the Oxfam publication for how to go about setting up this type of a meeting so you can keep track of the progress of the project. So these are the main three things, thinking about Hart's ladder as a overarching framework, then thinking about how you present the role of the teacher and how you make the change in your role explicit to the young people, then planning a little bit about how to agree initial goals and overcome the first obstacles that the young people will encounter. And then finally, once they're up and running, how to keep the momentum of the project going to its conclusion. So I find this is just really exciting work, and there's a whole bunch of resources that you can look at. So the one that Megan was referring to is the top one from 2023. We have written a brief guide for year 6 to year 13 England teachers on youth leadership. And then underneath that, I've just also added a number of other resources, Roger Hart's Ladder of Participation, the Get Global Guide to Active Global Citizenship, the 2 Oxfam guides that there's a lot of really, really interesting activities in, teaching controversial issues and global citizenship in the classroom. And then one of our European Union projects, Schools for Future Youth, which has the how to set up the meeting and making it accountable. But everything that comes after the first resource is sort of summarized in the first resource. So it's a case of first one, the youth leadership one, is the easy one to get into, and then everything else just develops it in greater detail. So, I believe I found that this work can be challenging sometimes to begin with, but it's really rewarding once you get into it. I think it's worth pursuing, not only to become a school of sanctuary, but also because of the broader importance of opening democratic spaces in school and helping young people develop citizenship skills and also just soft skills in general. So the good news is that these resources are all there to help you, and there's a big network of people, not just in City of Sanctuary, but also across the global citizenship sort of network to help you. A lot of great practice, which we're going to hear about in a moment, but I hope that as an opener, this has been helpful, giving you a sort of a little bit of a roadmap and some resources that you can dip into after you go away. Cool. So Megan, I'm going to try to stop sharing and hand back over to you now. There we go. Has that gone away now?
Yeah, that was fantastic. Thank you so much, John. I thought that was really helpful. I'm very conscious that when we go about some of these activities, sometimes we jump into them not without thinking about exactly how we're going to approach them with students. And I think the framework in particular will really help us kind of move upwards and being more focused on these participatory approaches. So thank you so much. I will, of course, share all those links at the end of this event in the next few days, along with the recording. But I very much recommend going and looking at that youth leadership guide. In the first instance, as John said, it's super accessible, very easy to kind of get your teeth into, with some really practical kind of tools and frameworks that you can start using in the classroom straight away. So yeah, very much recommend having a look at that. But next we're going to hear from a few different schools. I've tried really hard to get a good spread across the UK, and we're going to start off with our most recently awarded School of Sanctuary in Wales. And I'll invite Dylan and Jenny to come and share a little bit about what has been happening at Pembroke Dock Primary School.
Hi there, I'm Jenny. I'm part of the teaching team at Pembroke Dock Community School. And Dylan and myself are going to just share a few little tidbits, if you like, of things that we've been doing with the children that we've pulled in terms of far in relation to pupil voice. So we truly are a community school. We are based in one of the most beautiful counties, I think, in the UK, in Pembrokeshire. But it is also it's ranked in the top 10 most deprived areas of Wales. We truly are a community school at our heart, and equally with that, then I think that pupil voice is really strongly embedded in our school. And in addition to our recent award of becoming part of the School of Sanctuary team, we're also a Gold Rights Respecting School, and that's really well embedded in our school. And it was one of the reasons I think that we wanted to go even further and come on the School of Sanctuary journey. As part of our appraisal meeting with the School of Sanctuary team, our pupil voice groups were really well represented in that meeting. And Megan and the rest of the team then questioned the children, and they really enjoyed sharing what they pupil voice groups that are really well established in schools, starting with the school council that Dylan supports. We also have a rights respecting group. We have an eco group, a Crew Cymraeg, a junior road safety officer group, and digital leaders. They meet regularly. They have an established committee sort of structure with the chairman and the secretary, and we have super ambassadors for these groups as well. And they feed into the planning and decision making of the school, really, in a nutshell. So I think I'll leave it there and I'll hand it over to Dylan, because he leads a school council and works really closely with that group, and he can tell you a little bit more about the wonderful work they do.
Okay, so I've been involved with the school council now for the past 2 years, being here, and of course pupil voice is the main focus of the school council. So we meet every half term and go through an agenda decided by the children from their class meetings that they have, as well as anything that comes up with the staff, and we discuss it and we make our decisions, and we feed back then to the head teacher at the end of every half term. So something we've done quite recently is an equity walk. So the children were given the task of investigating whether we're an equitable school. So the children went and walked around and had a look at the equity in the school and whether it was good enough. And we did a write-up then after that, and we came up with some targets. So this year we've been looking at the targets now. One of our targets was to ensure diverse representation across the school. So different religions, different ethnicities, different disabilities on displays and on posters around the school. So we've done a second learning walk then, going and checking whether we have met that target. And we were really, really proud that we had met that target, and we were representing a range of different people in the school, as we are a community school, like Jenny said. We've got a range of pupils from different places in the world. So yeah, we were really, really pleased. As well, we have organised last year an Empathy for Ukraine Day. So with the news of the Ukraine war breaking out, the children were really, really concerned. So they wanted to do something. So instead of fundraising for comic relief, we decided we'd fundraise for Ukraine instead. So we all wore yellow and blue. We had a day dedicated to Ukraine activities. We fundraised, and we created a whole school paper chain with messages of empathy. So you know, pupil voice is something that we do every day in the school, but it's something we act on when decisions are made in the school council meetings. We do act on those. But it's not just the school council. I'm a year 2 teacher as well. So in year 2, we have used pupil voice to influence what we learn. We were doing a whole school topic of the United Nations SDG, to the goals. And we were learning about no poverty and hunger, because our curriculum is very authentic here in Wales, and we use the news and things like that to help us. But children were coming in and they were so worried about the war in Ukraine, and they were scared that we were going to get bombed. Was the plane above us Russians? You know, they were really, really concerned, and they were coming in worried, checking in every day, really worried. So we decided to stop our planning, and we focused completely on teaching them exactly what's happening in Ukraine. We put it in sort of a child-friendly way of Russia's this big bully, and you know, Ukraine wants to be part of this group, but the bully won't let them, for them to understand. And you know, they really understood it well. And we used the story then of Hassan, who was a Ukrainian refugee, and we compared our life to his to really give that child context of what refugee means. And the children were, you know, the empathy coming out of the children was massive. And they were feeling for them. They wanted to do something about it. Speaking of refugees, be outraged, only taking those in. So we decided, what can we do, boys and girls? So we decided we would fundraise. So we took our idea to Mrs. Thomas. We wanted to make hair clips and badges of sunflower emblem for Ukraine. We costed it. We wrote why we're doing it, and we made them, and we sold that. Then raised a couple of £100, and then we also gave those in charge a piece of our minds. So we did a persuasive email to Boris Johnson, to Mark Drakeford, the First Minister of Wales, and Sally Holland, who was the Children's Commissioner. Yeah, so we wrote an email to them, persuading them to welcome more refugees into Wales and into the UK, using the UNCRC, then the children's rights. So we looked at Article 22, Article 28, the access to education, the right to have a family, to right to have a home. And, you know, we got really, really powerful work out of them. And they really understood it. You know, as much as we had to support them with the persuasive aspect, their ideas and their passion was truly their own. So you can see here some examples linking to the rights here. And if you see in the bottom left-hand corner, some were quite passionate and quite angry at Boris Johnson and those who were in charge about their decision. So yeah, so basically, pupil voice is something that we do every day here, and it influences all sorts of decisions, whether it's on whole school or whether it's something what we learn in each year group, based on the news or based on whatever the children are interested in. I hope that's everything. Have you got anything?
Yeah, so that shot, some example of how well embedded pupil voice is at Pembroke Dock Community School, and we're planting really the seeds for social activation in a way that, you know, the children are so passionate about some of the things we discuss, and we're, you know, encouraging them to make sure that their voices are heard.
Yeah, and it's part of one of the 4 purposes of the curriculum is to become ethically informed citizens of Wales and the world. So we find that teaching them things about the world, doesn't it? It gets them ready for later in life, and the world issues that they shouldn't be sheltered from just because they're a little bit younger. They need to know what's going on and make their own minds up whether they think is right or wrong. So yes, that's what we do.
Thank you so much. That's fantastic, Dylan and Jenny. There was just a really quick follow-up question in the chat. It said, where did you get the items or criteria for the Equity Walk tick list? I mean, a good question would be, is this something that you thought of, or you had in hand, or did the students think of it before you
Yeah, it was something that the school council developed with Mrs. Thomas, our head teacher, and with another year 6 teacher. They came up with what the ideal school would look like, what an equitable school looks like, the ideas, and then they went around and sort of analysed everything that they looked at. Was it equitable? Was it fit for purpose? So it was something that we came up with as a school. And
I think it's worth mentioning that the school council reported their findings back to our full governing body. So, you know, it gave them that power, if you like, and that
responsibility, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. That's some really fantastic examples. Your sound cut out a little bit at times, but I think we got most of the message. So don't worry about it. It was just occasionally there was a bit of a break. But no, thank you so much for sharing. And I think, you know, what you were talking about in terms of the Welsh curriculum is particularly pertinent. You know, big part of the Welsh curriculum is making sure that young people are ethically informed citizens of the world and Wales. I think, you know, looking at it in the angle of Schools of Sanctuary, there's so many opportunities, and I'm really pleased as well that the Welsh curriculum allows, you know, teachers and schools to really respond to what children are wanting to learn and develop learning around that. It's really fantastic to see, and I know our Welsh schools network is growing very rapidly, so hopefully a few others will be following your lead in that way. Thank you so much, Dylan and Jenny.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, just to say also in the chat, John's just dropped in a really helpful resource about teaching about Ukraine. So I would very much recommend going and having a look at that. Again, I'll try and compile all of these and share them in the follow-up. But now I will pass over to Sheldon Phillips at St Saviour's C of E Primary School in London. Again, one of our newest Schools of Sanctuary, having just been awarded these past 2 weeks, celebration pending. But Sheldon's going to share a little bit about the fantastic Young Transformers project that they have developed down at St Saviour's. Over to you, Sheldon.
Hi, good afternoon. I hope everyone can see the screen okay. So we're based in Walthamstow, London, just a little bit outside central London, and we have a program called Young Transformers. It's very much linked to our school vision and what the Young Transformer is. As being a Church of England school, our values are embedded in that, and we want our children to live through those values. So our project vision, our general project vision, is very much about what are we about. Our values are linked to how do we do things around here, and our strategies provide students opportunities to live out that vision throughout their daily lives. Everything that we do is based around creating a public service, and our vision is aimed to train our children to be confident, independent learners with inquiring minds, love of learning, and I think every teacher's goal, really, for every child they teach. This is what you want your children to be at. Sorry. So we also have this public service that every child in our school is expected to participate, and we have different things that all children should be able to do at some stage throughout the entire year. We have playground monitors, classroom monitors, teacher helper, eco warriors, playground buddies, school council, book monitors. If something has to be monitored or looked after, I bet there's a child in charge of that somewhere across the school. But what we try to do is we have elections, and some will be appointed. And our learning counts, and being a Church of England school, a major part of our collective worship is around church, and so we have a worship council, and they will lead all our collective worship. So in summer 22, we decided to have a project called We Cannot Walk Alone. This was a project we developed within our education trust, with the aim around 3 things. We aim to, 1, educate our children about the topic of displacement, work with charities there to house refugees, and support refugees and asylum seeking by raising money and donating clothes and food. The project took place. Our Young Transformers were very clear about welcome was not enough. We needed some form of social action. So our children went about, I'm not sure if this is going to play, but I think it's probably best if it comes from them. So if it works, hopefully.
Important people, we want to tell you about the major project around refugee and displacement that we are leading. We are passionate about the plight of refugees and making the world a better place for them. Our You Cannot Walk Alone project aims to sponsor a refugee family so that they can live, work, and go to school safely within our community. I know what you're thinking. What do children know about this huge global issue? Well, the answer is lots.
We've had lessons around displacement. We've looked at the reasons why people flee or choose to leave their countries and the journeys they've taken. We've looked at statistics and policies of host countries in order to form educated opinions about what is happening around the world and the reasons behind difficult decisions. So you see, we have the knowledge and the skills to form opinions.
We have had the chance to experience first-hand accounts, such as one of our teachers who shared her emotional story of fleeing Syria with her young children. We simply couldn't just sit back and do nothing. So through holding raffles, quiz nights and other fundraising events, we have raised over £4,000, which means we can sponsor a family to come into the UK. And it's not just the money that we are raising. We held a cultural festival to educate others about the plight of refugees.
This cultural festival allows us to celebrate our project and share traditional songs and dances from different countries.
But most importantly, to share our important message about refugees with the community and with community leaders. But we're not finished yet. We need your help to find them a home, somewhere safe, warm and comfortable to begin rebuilding their lives.
We cannot do this alone.
Please help us find suitable housing.
No one should have to walk alone.
I think I might just stop that there. Just a little, we're exceptionally proud of our children. So we encourage our children to take action. We did not want to just to do the theoretical bit. So what our children did was we encouraged them to be change makers. They presented their work to our local council. They met with housing association directors. Actually, they learned a harsh lesson. They were turned away from our association, but they were able to then build on that resilience and went back, which was amazing. They presented to other schools. Over Christmas, we sang carols for family. We have a local IBIS hotel where there are 400 children based in the hotel. And our year fours, for example, decided that every child deserved a Christmas gift as well as a personal card. That were the actions our children took. And just an update on the goals that they reached. They've actually raised £15,000 now. The children have done that, and I think last week we secured a house for the family that is based in Syria. So in terms of our children doing something, they're keeping us exceptionally busy. They want the action to take place, and they're definitely not holding back. I spoke to one of the girls earlier today, and she said, "Can we do another project? There's another few families we can bring from other parts of the world." It's like, okay. I don't think they're going to let this one lie. A few things we did that they organized. We had Enterprise Day, which I think most schools will have, but all they arranged it themselves. They raised the money for our refugee project. At cultural festivals, placing a high value on respect for each other in the community, as well as sharing everything that they did with enthusiasm, excitement, and hopefully we have created little beast that is going to change this world and make it a better place. That's our goal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sheldon. That was a very concise presentation because I know that there was so much to talk about. I think, you know, one of the things that really stood out when we were speaking with the children at Sheldon School was they had this really in-depth understanding of some of the challenges and quite specific challenges. So as Sheldon mentioned, one of the things they've looked at at a school was the experiences of those currently being housed in hotels, institutional accommodation. And the children were really reflective about, you know, it's not like you're going on holiday, you know, how tight and cramped it must be to be confined to a small room. And so they were really able to discuss these quite complex themes and topics very articulately. So it's fantastic to hear that. We were going to have another speaker from Birmingham, but I'm not sure if Vanessa's on the line. I will pause and see if she jumps in on the off chance, but I don't think she is. In which case, I will just really quickly show a few ideas, highlight some helpful resources and opportunities that you might want to use as your school works on these areas, and then also touch on some activities or some themes you might want to focus on over the coming weeks and months as you go about empowering student voice and leadership with regard to sanctuary themes. As John mentioned at the start, you know, we're talking very generally about student leadership and student voice, and there's so many ways you can use some of these tools. It doesn't just need to be around refugee or sanctuary themes. But what I will do now is highlight a couple of ways that you might want to focus on these areas. So without further ado, I will share my screen and hopefully you can see that really well. I'll just make sure I'm on slideshow. Fantastic. So on our Schools of Sanctuary website, we now have a whole page dedicated to student voice and leadership. So go and have a look. I will make sure I update it with all the links that we've mentioned already today, including obviously Oxfam's Youth Leadership Guide, but I'll make sure to add all those other resources that John highlighted. So you'll have a kind of one place to find all the things that might be useful. A couple of other useful tools that you might want to look at. UNICEF has a youth advocacy toolkit, which is to look in general about how young people around the world can develop as advocates for a variety of issues. Amnesty International also has a youth activist toolkit, which is a little bit more focused on the UK context. And certainly one thing that I did like about that toolkit was it looked at if students want to get involved in things like lobbying and talking to people who make decisions on their behalf. It looks at, you know, who exactly they should be talking to, depending on the different subject that they're wanting to talk about. So that was a really helpful tool as well. And again, as I mentioned, this is all on that one website, on our one web page on our website now. One other thing that I wanted to flag and make sure you're all aware of is that you know, what we're talking about is helping young people develop as active young citizens and young advocates, hopefully, you know, tomorrow's future leaders. So it's really important that they learn about who is making these decisions and how these decisions are made. So if you're not already aware, you know, all of the seats of power across the UK offer a fantastic range of free workshops, visits to that place, and a load of resources to help you learn about these things. So I know, for example, the UK Parliamentary Outreach Team are really fantastic. They offer a range of workshops, either online or in person, to learn about you know, how you are represented in the UK Parliament, what kind of decisions are made and how they are made, that are great for both primary and secondary schools. It's very much the same. There's you know, there's lots of resources, and you can do visits to go and visit the Welsh Parliament, see the Scottish Parliament, and again the Northern Irish Assembly, a whole range of different things. So I would very much recommend going and having a look at those. As I mentioned before, they're all free, so fantastic for all of our schools, I think. But these are the kind of the tools or workshops or opportunities we can use to help young people learn about these issues, but then learn and develop these skills. But when we're wanting to focus exactly on what they could be doing, here are a few ideas. So Valentine's Day is fast approaching. Last year, quite a number of our schools really got involved with a collective Valentine's Day action. You know, a big part of School of Sanctuary is helping young people, you know, be compassionate, build empathy, feel love for one another and for people seeking safety. And so this Valentine's Day, it's a great opportunity to show your heart for those who are seeking safety in our communities. And there's a whole range of ways we can do this. You know, a number of schools have made fantastic eye-catching orange heart displays to show their solidarity for people seeking sanctuary. Other schools helps their young people think about why we should be reaching out a hand to people seeking sanctuary, leading with compassion, with love, and reflect on their thoughts in that area. And then sending these cards, often in a Valentine's Day card format, to their local MP, you know, asking them to also lead with compassion and with love towards those who are seeking safety. Similarly, with Mother's Day and Father's Day coming up, I know a lot of families use that as an opportunity for children to thank their grown-ups for the care and support that they offer them. Unfortunately, as we've all been hearing in the news over recent weeks, there are a whole bunch of young people who are not able to benefit from the support and care of a grown-up because they have been separated from their families. And you know, UK policy is at the moment that young people who are separated from their families are not allowed to be reunited with their parents in the UK and bring them to the UK once they have been here. So there's this fantastic campaign called Families Together, which argues that, you know, all young people have the right to be with their mother and father. And so this Mother's Day and this Father's Day, why not help your students think about this issue, especially with everything that's going on in the news, and then show their support getting behind the Families Together campaign. We will be sharing some further details about that in our next newsletter, so do keep an eye out. but I know a load of you use lots of different books and things like that, and we'll be touching on some of the books that touch on these themes to help you learn about these issues. Another way that you can help students lead on certain activities, kind of what Sheldon and Jenny and Dylan talked about earlier, is put the children in charge of supporting a local refugee charity. You know, help the young people, reach out to them, ask them, you know, how can we be of support, and then let them lead the fundraising or donation efforts. Let them, you know, encourage their peers to write welcome letters to new arrivals to the community, compile them, and then give them to the local refugee charity to distribute on their behalf. There's a whole wealth of ways that young people can lead in that area. Similarly, kind of as Jenny and Dylan talked about, a number of schools have also established a student sanctuary group. Often this is a group of students who have arrived mid-year or are from forced migration backgrounds. And it's specifically for these students because they have experienced, you know, arriving mid-year alone, perhaps being a bit disrupted, and it gives them a safe space to discuss together some of the things that they found challenging, and then advise the school on that, how they can be more welcoming. So I know, for example, another school in Wales has a welcome committee that has done just that. So a group of students who have experienced this and then are now trying to make you know, school practice better for new people coming in the future. That's a really great idea. And finally, I know this year we are expecting quite a few schools to go through the awards process and be recognised. And as part of your award celebration, I would very much encourage you to use this as an opportunity to reach out to the members of your community, to reach out to local dignitaries and, you know, ask them, please come into our school, learn about what we're doing, learn about the things that we've been reading about and hear what we think about them. In particular, we've seen a number of schools whose children have written letters of invitation to the local mayor, councillors, MPs, saying, please come to our award celebration. We've been awarded the School of Sanctuary Award. We want to tell you what this is, why it's so important. And then children using that opportunity to talk to the people who are making these decisions about the things that they think are important. So I would very much recommend you doing that. And also it's a wonderful opportunity for you also to get the recognition that you deserve for all the efforts you've put in. So that is all from me. I hope that has given you a few ideas to work with. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. It is now 10 to 5. I know Dylan and Jenny have had to, yeah, John, a fantastic link there that you've put in. They work for you. I know a lot of young people are not wanting to go into these meetings with MPs without having the information. So this is a great way that they can learn exactly what their MPs think about certain issues. For example, we know a number of MPs in Birmingham are super supportive to our schools, have responded really, really well to letters that children have written them. That's not the case across the UK. And maybe children want to be aware and challenge their MP on some things that maybe they disagree with. Thank you, Sheldon, for offering to share your resources. There's a huge wealth. I know you've done loads of stuff around certain books and things, which is obviously going to be helpful coming into World Book Day as well at the start of March. But for now, I will open up the floor. I will stop recording and open up the floor for any final questions that people might have.